Hello and welcome to Up the Turnpike, your source for New York Islanders content, both here on YouTube and over on Patreon, where we have our podcast. That's patreon.com/uptheturnpike. In today's video, we're doing some trade talking. And what I mean by that specifically is we're going to look at players that the Islanders are going to be trying to offload leading up to the 2025 trade deadline, looking at what we might want to receive for those players, and then what teams might service that need leading up to that trade deadline. Now, when it comes to what players the Islanders might be looking to offload, I think everyone's got their own lists that differ. Some are going full scorched earth and trading anyone that's not bolted down to a bajillion-year contract, like Scott Mayfield. Or they're going a little bit more conservative and only trading a few players. And I think we can all agree on at least three names that are on everyone's list, whether you're scorched earth or conservative. And that's Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, and Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Three players that are also on the board for Daily Faceoff. Brock Nelson is at the top of the trade bait board. Number 13 is Kyle Palmieri. He's down right here. And then number 16 is Jean-Gabriel Pageau. All of them are on their board. They're on my board, and they're probably on yours as well. No matter how scorched earth or not you want to go with this retool or rebuild, as you want to call it. So those are the players we're going to be looking to offload. Now, what do we want for those players? That, again, super debatable, incredibly debatable. For me, it starts, at least with Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, at a first. We're looking at a first-round pick. And, of course, when it comes to a first-round pick in for these trades, we're not looking at a top 10 or a top 5 pick. No, we're not trading these guys to Chicago. It's going to be to cup contenders, teams that are hopefully going on it, well, they hope anyways, on a deep playoff run, which means that pick is going to end up in the 20s or higher, right? It's going to be a late first round pick. So the value isn't crazy high when you think of a first rounder, but it's still pretty high. So it starts there for either Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Jean-Gabriel Pageau is not returning a first round pick. I can't believe that's going to happen. We traded one for him. I don't expect one in return. I don't. But for Brock and Kyle, it doesn't stop at a first round pick. I'm adding a top-end prospect as well. So first round and a top-end prospect for at least Brock Nelson. I'd like to get one for Kyle Palmieri, but I think I'm being a little bit too greedy there. It's probably going to come back a first and a second, or first and like an okay prospect. Maybe. For Kyle. So that's where we are for those two guys. For Jean-Gabriel Pageau, I'm thinking 2 second-round picks. And I think just about any team under the sun can service that for Jean-Gabriel Pageau. So we're not going to go too deep into what teams can we send Jean-Gabriel Pageau to. Just about any of them. That comes calling. I think it's just going to come down to preference or who wants them more type of thing. But it's going to matter when it comes to Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Not every team can afford Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. So when it gets to those players, this is where it gets a little interesting, because based off of my valuation, I said first round pick. Well, not all teams have a first round pick, at least in the upcoming draft. We don't need no 2027, 2026 or further first round picks. We're looking for first round picks next year. And not every team has those picks. When I looked through just about every team's roster that's in a playoff position, I came up with a short list of teams that need center depth. And I'm thinking Colorado, Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota. That's kind of debatable, I guess. The Devils and Vegas. Those are the teams that I feel require center depth and are definitely going to the playoffs, at least in my opinion. So those are teams that have the need for someone. Just for Brock Nelson, where we're just focusing on him right now. They have a need for Brock Nelson. Okay, but it started at a first. Do those teams have a first round pick next year, right, in 2025? Well, when you look at the board here, and it displays it nicely, they don't all have that pick. New Jersey's pick is gone. Colorado's pick is gone. Minnesota's pick is gone. And so is Nashville's. Nashville's. Vegas. I don't know why I said Nashville there. So you're really only left with Dallas as a place to go, and really Winnipeg of the teams that I listed. Now, these teams can acquire a first-round pick later, but I'm not going to do all this crazy mental arithmetic to figure out if they can or can't get a first-rounder. They don't have one now, so you're dead. for now. We'll get back to them in a second there. But those are the teams that we're looking for. So it's Dallas and Winnipeg. Okay, they've got a first. What about top-end prospect, right? Because that was the other requirement, specifically for Brock Nelson. Do they have a top-end prospect? Sure. Dallas, yes. From Dallas, we're looking at either Liam Bichsel or Stankoven. I understand they're not the same. They're not one-for-one equal. Liam Bichsel and Logan Stankoven are not the same player in terms of even valuation. But if we're talking top-end prospects, I desperately want to yank Logan Stankoven out of there. Give me the Stank all day, every day, and a first. We can start debating on what first. Maybe at that point I'm thinking, okay, maybe we'll go into 2026 location. Maybe. But it's got to start there for the New York Islanders when it comes to looking to offload Brock Nelson. Because while he's not scored in what seems like a bajillion years, he's still a perennial 30-goal scorer. He's a 60 to 70-point center. He's great offensively. He's great defensively. Plays on the power play. Can play on the penalty kill. He can help any team going on a deep playoff run, as the Dallas Stars hope to do again. So if they're the place to go, then Stankoven's got to be on the list, in my opinion. From there in Winnipeg, it kind of drops down in terms of the excitement of a possible Stankoven acquisition, which is shaky at best. I know. You'll say it in the comments. I totally agree. From there in Winnipeg, you're looking at Brad Lambert is probably their most attractive prospect. And even then, I don't know about that. There are some qualms about him when he was drafted. He seems to have gone over all those qualms. He's doing pretty well right now, specifically at the AHL. Even earned himself a little call-up when the Winnipeg Jets were going through a little bit of an injury bug there. So there's some redeeming qualities there with Brad Lambert, and there's certainly possibility. When you look at his stats right now, you can see for the Manitoba Moose, 15 points in 26 games. That's broken, though, right? Because he's got that 4-game call-up at the NHL. Last year, 55 points in 64 games. Remember, he was playing in Finland before this, and then he goes pro and goes off, right? 54 points in 64 games in his first year in the North American pros. That was mighty impressive. There's something there with Brad Lambert. It's just, is it all there? And can he become a top 6 forward at the NHL level? That's still unsure. So again, big step down from talking about Logan Stankoven in a second ago. But if you're talking about a first plus Brad Lambert, maybe we're at a place here where we can start talking about Brock Nelson. But that's at least what I'm looking for there when it comes to Brock Nelson. Now, when it comes to Kyle Palmieri, we talked about it first. And we went over a certain number of teams there. But some of those teams are for centers, right? They have a need down the middle. They might also have a need down on the wing. But there are other teams that I listed who might have a need on the wing that don't have a necessary need down the middle. We're talking about Boston. We're talking about Tampa, maybe Edmonton, and maybe Minnesota as well, depending. I have question marks next to Edmonton and Minnesota. But again, first-round pick for Kyle Palmieri. So when we look at a handy-dandy chart here, some of those teams don't have first-rounders. Again, Minnesota doesn't have a first-rounder or first-round pick this year. Edmonton, no first-round pick, I assume. No. Who was the other team? Boston. Boston has theirs. It's a little bit lower now, which makes it even more attractive. And then Tampa, which is they don't have it. So we're looking at Boston probably for Kyle Palmieri. Assuming based off of the names that I had here, they want him. And I'm sure they do. They need goals. They don't have great depth down the wing. Seems like someone they could use. Seems like a play they'd make. But when you look at their depth or their prospect depth, it's not great. Fabien Lysell is really their best prospect in that pool. And he's been fine. He's been kind of relegated to the AHL for a while now. I'm just trying to bring up the stats here as I look away from my monitor. It's nothing to like. It's nothing scream home about. He's also 21-year-old, right? So he's a little bit of an older prospect, 21 years old, drafted 21st overall in 2021. Right now has 18 points in 28 games, which isn't bad for Providence. Had 50 points in 56 games the year prior. But he's been bouncing around the AHL for a better part of 3 years now, and really only has one game for Boston. And remember, they've been struggling this year and has only been able to factor into one game. Oliver Wahlstrom is playing over this guy. That tells you a lot. Not that Oliver Wahlstrom is a garbage player. It's just he wasn't good enough for us. And this guy isn't better than him, apparently. That has some red flags, if you will, attached to it, in my opinion. So I'm not really sure about a good place for Kyle Palmieri. As I look down the list of other teams, I'm thinking New Jersey would be great, sending him back there, right? Like, go on a deep playoff run with that team. You get to play third line minutes, be an impact player off the bench, get to play on the power play with them. That'd be great. If we can get Simon Nemec back. Getting Simon Nemec back out of there would be ideal for sure in a trade for Kyle Palmieri. Now, I'm not sure if we can get there, but that's where I'm starting the discussion at the very least. Trying to get Simon Nemec from them. That's a right-handed defenseman. So for all of you Let's Trade Noah Dobson people out there, this fits the bill. 20 years old, drafted second overall, 6'1", 185. They probably have plans for him, obviously, going forward, but they've already got a pretty young and mobile blue line that it might be hard for him to fit in, at least for the next year or two. And he's doing decent enough, 8 points in 19 games on a not that great Utica Comets team. Has played 69 games, nice, at the NHL level over the last 2 years. So he's looking for another place. If they're looking to get Kyle, maybe we start talking about Simon Nemec, and I think that fills a lot of holes for us. It really does. Maybe not in the immediate, because bringing in a 21-year-old to effectively replace Noah Dobson isn't great, assuming you're trading Noah Dobson, of course. But I'm at the point where I entertain the idea, at the very least. And if I'm doing so, trying to get Simon Nemec out of New Jersey makes a whole heck of a lot of sense for me. That's my list. That's my valuations. So again, Brock Nelson first and a good prospect. Kyle Palmieri a first and a decent prospect, or just a really good prospect like Nemec. And Jean-Gabriel Pageau, something around 1 to 2 second round picks for him. And the teams that can acquire him, it's a few teams there for either one of those players. But I'm thinking that the best landing spot for Brock Nelson is somewhere between Dallas and Winnipeg. For Kyle Palmieri, it's either Boston or maybe New Jersey. And Jean-Gabriel Pageau, it's really just take your pick of just about any team that's in a playoff position come the trade deadline. Really, it's really going to come down to that for Jean-Gabriel Pageau. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure your trade valuations are much different than mine. But let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following. And we'll see you next time.